Kinds of Kindness, one of the most anticipated movies of this year, has been released, and today we will talk about the newly released movie and review it. In addition, this video will consist of 2 parts, with and without spoilers. You can choose as you wish from the Chapters tab. As you know, the young director Yorgos Lanthimos' film Poor Things, which has attracted a lot of attention from the audience and was appreciated by the media in recent months, took its place in movie theaters. It even won the famous actress Emma Stone her second Oscar. Lanthimos gained his rise with his second feature film, Dogtooth, which he presented to cinema lovers in 2009. Although Dogtooth was the director's first film in which he entered the industry with firm steps, it achieved a shocking success by being nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar. Lanthimos gained his rise with his second feature film, Dogtooth, which he presented to cinema lovers in 2009. After this success, we started to hear the name Lanthimos more and more. The director, who started making films entirely in English after Dogtooth, made a name for himself in Hollywood. I was waiting with great curiosity for Lanthimos' new movie, Kinds of Kindness. In this production, we see that he divided the film into 3 main stories. We follow these 3 main stories within the framework of love, manipulation, control, mystery, and sex. Kinds of Kindness is such a movie that when there are pieces that don't fall into place in your mind while watching, it becomes more difficult to make sense of what you are watching. It is as if there are gaps in the story, and each audience has to make sense of and shape these gaps in their own way. One of the main themes he wants to tell, in my opinion, is very close to philosophy. Instead of immediately imposing the answer on the audience, he asks the question to the audience. When this happens, the answer can often remain open-ended, but his real intention is not to give a clear answer, but to explain himself by making the people he addresses think about. Kinds of Kindness was a movie that everyone could call absurd in terms of story. One of the questions that came to my mind the most while watching was, why? It was a production that made you feel the absurdity and strangeness to the fullest and made you feel uncomfortable in some ways. They achieved this by using cinematography because the atmosphere and soundtrack of the film drew you in and made you wonder. We see actors Emma Stone, Margaret Qualley, Jesse Plemons, and Willem Dafoe as the main characters that provide the main flow of the film in 3 different stories. I think Jesse Plemons in particular had a critical position in this movie. I can say that he dominated most of the movie because we watched the first 2 stories through him, and his performance was worthy of a standing ovation. We all witnessed the absurdity, helplessness, and mystery in the characters, and one of the most striking aspects of the film was the acting. When we evaluated the acting from another perspective, I felt that the script and character writing were a bit robotic and complicated, but when I thought about it a little more, I realized that the absurdity and strangeness in the story could not be presented to us without being reflected in the characters and acting. After Poor Things, my expectations for this movie increased when I evaluated it in terms of cinematography and atmosphere. Because Poor Things offered us a surreal world. After all, Kinds of Kindness is an anthology film, and the main purpose of anthology films is to focus on the theme. It does this by using different stories as a tool, and this technique allows us to focus more on the event while watching the movie, and try to understand the stories through our own filter. Maybe this is one of the reasons why Yorgos Lanthimos is a director that does not appeal to everyone. One of the factors that makes Yorgos Lanthimos stand out is that he does not try to explain himself. He is a director who highlights the theme and does whatever he wants. In this respect, I can say that it resembles Wes Anderson films, not completely, but in terms of theme. In Kinds of Kindness, if we consider all 3 stories, we see the desperate need you feel to prove the love you have for someone. In all 3 main stories, the limits you will push to prove this, or the limits you will not recognize, hit us like a slap in the face. It seems to me that the main reason the 3 main characters in the 3 stories pursue these controlling and manipulative relationships is the sense of emptiness they feel within themselves. They try to fill that void by imposing it on themselves by believing that these relationships are real. Maybe it comes from their need for others to appreciate them. I personally think this is the point best conveyed in the movie. What it tries to convey is not love. Even though it is presented as a relationship and love, You realize while watching that the bond between them is definitely not love. There is no love and affection. There is power, manipulation, emptiness, and helplessness. And we clearly see how such toxic relationships can actually be unsatisfying at the end of the day. There will be spoilers from this section of the video. In the 3 sections from the beginning to the end of the film, we see the character RMF, whose role we mostly cannot understand, but when trying to combine it, it may seem illogical at first. But when we focus on the big picture, we see that every thread is actually connected to each other. While watching the movie, I constantly thought about the question of what the RMF character's purpose was in the movie. Yorgos Lanthimos is a director who likes to use metaphors, as is known from his other films. Now let's examine the purpose of the RMF character and the metaphor, the point where the stories come together. In the first story, we see the character Robert, who has a manipulative and controlling relationship with his boss. We witness the story of Robert, whose life is controlled by the pressure of his boss Raymond, from his food to his diet, his sexual relationship with his wife, and even his decision to have a child. Raymond's last request is for Robert to hit the man who appears as RMF with his car, even if it means killing him. And here we see Robert, who says that he cannot be held responsible for killing a person and uses his own free will. But after this free will, things will not go the way he wants. His wife finds out everything and leaves him. He becomes unemployed and his life turns upside down. Realizing what this cost and regretting it, Robert wants to go back to Raymond and apologize and begs him to fulfill whatever else he wants. But this request is rejected by Raymond. We witness Robert, who could not get what he wanted, kidnap RMF, who was hospitalized, and crush and kill him with his car in order to satisfy Raymond, and he returns to Raymond. Coming to the second story, we witness the depressive period that Daniel, a police officer, fell into after his wife Liz disappeared. Liz, an underwater biologist, gets caught in a storm, and her boat sinks and disappears. The search and rescue efforts are finally over, and Liz is one of the 2 survivors. There is no injury whatsoever, and she returns home. But from the moment he returns home, there is something about Liz that Daniel cannot convince him of, as if there is someone different in front of him, not his wife. Convinced that Liz is not actually Liz, Daniel goes under great stress and is suspended from work for a while due to his violent behavior during work and begins using medication. Absolutely refusing to eat, Daniel finally tells Liz that he is hungry and tells her to cut off his own finger and cook it. Liz, who cuts off her own finger and cooks it to please Daniel, is almost desperately trying to prove her love. Daniel comes again and says that he did not eat the finger and wants to eat something more delicious and healthy. What he wants this time is Liz's liver. In the last scene, we see Liz dead on the chair and her lungs ripped out next to her, and Daniel passes by and opens the door. The person who comes is Liz and they hug each other, and the second story ends. If we look at the third story, we see a woman who left her husband and little daughter behind. Emily is a woman searching for the person with superhuman powers. She left his home and family to do this. Entering a sect, Emily's mission is to search for the sacred in order to satisfy the people they see as the Messiah. One of the rules of this sect is that they are forbidden to have sex with anyone other than the people they lead. One day, Emily has a dream and says that one of the twins she saw in her dream is the person they are looking for. At the restaurant where they sit to eat, a young woman comes to them and says that she knows Emily and that the person she is looking for is her twin sister Ruth. Emily and her assistant do not take this into consideration and do not pursue the woman. Emily, who goes to visit her old house to see her family, faints because her husband drugged her drink, and her husband rapes Emily after she faints. By morning, it's too late for Emily to clean herself up, as the cult notices everything and dismisses her. But Emily, who doesn't give up on this, meets with the woman who met her before and gets information about her twin. After meeting Ruth, he realizes that she is really the person he is looking for and kidnaps Ruth to make amends. As a result of a car accident on the road, Ruth, her only chance to be accepted back into the sect, dies, and the movie ends there, tragically. Now we all have a question on our minds. How are all these stories connected and what is being told? When viewed as a whole, the film explores power dynamics in human relationships, complex love, the risks brought by unhealthy relationships, and the absurd things they make people do. RMF is not the only common point in all three stories. In all three, the characters seek happiness, validation of love, self-sacrifice, and themes of dependency are present. In all three characters, we see the need for appreciation and acceptance that they seek from others. This is Robert's ability to kill someone for Raymond, Liz's difficulty in pleasing Daniel, and Emily's search for a messiah for Omi. All of these are efforts to prove ourselves and seek acceptance and validation from the external world and other people. All three characters know no limits to achieve their goals, but in the end, they can neither achieve their goals nor find happiness. The movie reminds us how little control we have, even in our own lives. Although the three stories may seem very separate and unrelated, they all share a common point: the hopeless cycle that controlling and toxic relationships can trap a person in. As for RMF, we see that the RMF character, whom Robert killed for Raymond at the beginning, is brought back from the dead by Ruth in the last story. This proves that Ruth is the Messiah. But it is said that RMF actually symbolizes a metaphor from the letters inside it. R, redemption, M, manipulation, and F, faith. In my opinion, it fits well with each story and is the most logical of the theories discussed. Kinds of Kindness is a movie that cannot be looked at superficially, and as you examine it, you will find more details and similarities between the stories. Even if you don't like Lanthimos, it's hard not to acknowledge his skill in storytelling through absurdity in the screenplay. In this era where cinematic strangeness and mystery are on the rise, it seems we'll be hearing Lanthimos' name more often.